speak comfortably, and if we hear from the chat that, hey, we can't hear you, I will move forward. So please begin.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We are going to try to be concise but as informative as we can. This is our first Event Steward panel. Your panel is made up of peers of our barony and the kingdom that have autocrated events anywhere from a local event all the way up to a kingdom war. This information will help anybody interested in hosting an event, and it gives y'all a chance to get to know us so you have a go-to resource if you need some help. So we're pleased to welcome you all in attendance to the first event stewarding panel hosted by the Barony of Ysgithr. We have a wonderful lineup of peers to help you on your journey of hosting events in the Barony and in the Kingdom. Please allow me a moment to introduce your panel members. To my left is Countess Golda. Pronounce your last name for me so I don't make a muck of it.
Daniel.
Okay. We have, it does not look like that.
Nope.
We have Mistress Magdalene Venturosa. We have Sir Ruin McCool. On my right is Viscountess Victoria of the Vales of Barnsdale. And we have Mistress Tigra McKay of Marwood. Each person on this panel has an extensive history within the Kingdom and the Barony. Countess Golda has been in the SEA for 25 years and has been an event steward, royalty, and merchant liaison multiple times. Hall steward and general gopher of multiple resources and positions. She will be covering the topic of working with crowns, cornets, and royalty at your event. Mistress Magdalene is a pelican and Bannthegn Tigra-Event. She has been in the SEA for 31 years. She has been an event steward for over a dozen events, including Australia War twice, because she's crazy, with Victoria and Tigra, because they're crazy too, Coronation and Kingdom ANS. She has been the main feast of steward for over a dozen feasts and catered 3 SEA weddings. She is currently the head of the Kingdom's Cooks Guild, so if you like to cook, she's your lady. She's going to be covering topics of feast and food and events, high board, low board, and what those terms mean in today's events, and the resources you should be looking for when you want a feast at your event. Sir Ruin McCool is a pelican, knight, and Thane of Ysgithr. He's been in the SEA for 26 years and has been the site steward for Southern Crusades more times than we care to actually admit to. And he has been the royal steward for 6 reigns. He'll be discussing equipment, transporting equipment, who you've got to talk to for that equipment, and how to plan for your equipment. So all of your logistics for everything you're going to need for an event, he is going to help you figure out how to get it to your site. Viscountess Victoria of the Vales of Barnsdale is a pelican, laurel, and Bannthegn of Tigra-Event. She has served as Princess of the Sun for 4 reigns. She has been active in the Kingdom of Atenveldt for 49 years. Woo! Right?
Really long.
Her and Viscountess Sir Justin Duroc created... Did I say?
Do it. Just sorry, I got you. Sorry.
They created Baron's War, and she remained as the main event steward for Baron's War for the 4 years of its existence. She's with their excellencies Tigra and Magdalene. They have autocrated Australia War Maine 28 and 2930, my bad. That's all right. And is currently a deputy Maine for the War of the Phoenix. She served as baronial ANS officer twice, Principality ANS and Kingdom ANS officer, and she has stewarded the 3rd ANS competition in the Kingdom. She has stewarded and assisted running countless other events. She is the Kingdom's Judging Certification Officer. She's going to be covering the topic of A&S competitions and wars, what it takes, everything, those events, because they have a completely different set parameter set. Mistress Tigra McKay of Marwood, Pelican and Bannthegn of Ysgithr. She has been in the SEA for 34 years, and during that time she has held many baronial and kingdom level offices, such as Waterbearing, Exchequer, and Seneschal. She has been the event steward for baronial and kingdom level events, from baronial tournaments to inter-baronial wars, from crown tournaments to the main of Australia War 29 and 30, alongside Viscountess Victoria, Mistress Magdalene. And currently, she is the registration coordinator for this year's War of the Phoenix. She's going to be covering event administration, your forms, your timelines, everything it takes to make certain that our events are in compliance with both corporate and kingdom law. And finally, I am Mistress Thera Ingen Aiden O'Regan. Bless me. I am a Pelican. I am a Laurel. I am a Bannthegn of Ysgithr. I have been in the SEA for 18 years. I hit the ground running, and I have carried a consistent warrant for most of that 18 years. I've held a variety of offices, from the Archery Marshal of Ysgithr to Baronial Seneschal up to Kingdom Seneschal. I've hosted events, both traditional, and I've created an event from scratch. I have helped with a number of Southern Crusades. I am currently the land coordinator for War of the Phoenix, and I have also been royal steward for 5 reigns. Together, all of us at this table, all 6 of us, make a great resource. If you choose to take on an event, you don't have to take it on alone. We're here to help. Now, with that being said, we're going to start this, and if anybody would like to follow along, we do have packets up here. But we will start this. How would you like? Would you like to go first? I'll go ahead and all right. So, I'm sorry. I left something out about myself. I will be covering budgeting, advertising, and did I just glitch? Budgeting, advertising. There's something else in here, and I'll remember what it is in a moment.
We'll get
All
that.
right. Bannthegn Tigra. I almost called you Tigra.
Now you wonder why people get us confused. All right, so starting from the beginning. So you want an autocrat an event, right? So I'm assuming your starting concept is you have an idea as to what you want to do, right? Or you're interested in running an already existing event, which is, in most baronies, very useful and helpful for new starters, right? Like the Barony of Ysgithr has a couple of very routine events we hold every year. Great Helm, which is the event that we hold to determine who the champions of the barony are, and God Awful Grail. Okay, those are long-standing events in this barony. They're pretty simple to run. You coordinate with the Seneschal to find a site. Typically, we have been using the local parks here in Tucson, although lately that has been switching because the parks have changed their policy. So one of the first things you want to do, besides thinking of your vision for what event you want to run and what you want in that event, is you need to reach out to the Seneschal and the B&B if it's a local thing, or kingdom level if you're looking to do a larger kingdom level event, because you need those 2 people are going to help you make sure you fill out the right paperwork. There's an event form online that is fillable that you will work with your Seneschal, whether kingdom or baronial, to fill out so that it is properly documented. You'll also create a budget, which we'll talk a little bit more about. But then you want to think about the things you want at your event, right? So you need a site. Obviously, we have to have some place to do it. What do you want to have at your event? Do you want to have fighting? Do you want to have both hardsuit and rapier fighting? Do you want to have archery? Do you want to have an arts competition as part of the event? Again, if you're going to do a baronial event, talking with the B&Bs will kind of help you think about those things and the direction you want to go with that. Do you want the event to be specifically themed, like Viking only sort of flavored event? Or is it just going to be a mixed thing? Do you want to do camping at your event? We do a lot of that as well. So you want to think about what your vision is to start, and then you want to think about sites. We in Ysgithr have lots of available sites depending on what your event's going to be. We typically do our sites at the parks, but we can also use several churches around town. There are hotels around town that have large theater areas that are available. If you wanted to do an indoor event, we used to do a Foprebel, right? Which is an indoor thing that was a feast and dancing. So there's the opportunity to do fighting events or non-fighting events. It just depends on what your vision is and where you want to go with that. So you want to meet early on, right? You've got a vision. You need to meet early on with the Baronial or Kingdom Seneschal because you need to find out what's the form that needs to be filled out. You need some information about your site, which we've already talked about. But then the other thing you'll have to do is go before whichever budget committee to put forth a budget to get approved for you to do your event. You'll need to, as part of that planning for your budget, again, figure out if you're going to have prizes for the events and how those are going to be done. Would somebody donate a prize for your tournament or not? Would you be able to get support from you need to talk to the marshalate's office because they have to marshal the fighting if you're going to have it. You have to talk to the archery marshal if you're going to have archery because there are specific parameters that are required for archery to be at an event with distances required for protection and safety of all people. You as the event steward are not expected to know all of these specific rules. There are bodies within the organization, whether they be at the baronial level or the kingdom level, who can help you figure out how big your eric needs to be for your fighting event to be, how much space you need for your archery. That's what the officer corps within the barony or the kingdom is for, to help you make those decisions and understanding. So you probably want to meet with the seneschal. You probably want to go to an officers meeting and talk with those marshals. You want to talk with, again, if you're doing it local, with your B&B to work out a vision and your approach for that. And you want to do that early. If you want to do your event, you want to think about, obviously a month is not probably enough time for you to plan and put all your parts together and get all the helpers you're going to need for that. But 6 months is probably a good way to look at things. Sooner if you want, the bigger the event, the further out your planning should be. A war, you need to start planning for another war like War of the Phoenix the month after the war ends. And Victoria will talk more about that. So you want to be thinking about those people who you're going to reach out to for help and support. And really the first big thing is to find your site, which there are lots of resources to help you with those.
We have a question on live stream.
Sure. Hey.
Do you need to contact the site first for their ability or the seneschal first with the proposed site?
Oh, so it is not a bad idea to first check with your seneschal because you need to know what dates are available on the calendar. The calendar, if you're looking at putting your event on the kingdom calendar is shared between all the baronies and the shires and the colleges and the kingdom. So picking out an event date can be difficult. Event schedules, so the kingdom calendar, which has all the baronial events on it, is planned a year ahead. So the barons will get together in January, February, or actually I think it's after War of the Phoenix. So they'll get together in 2024 to plan the 2025 calendar. That's how far out they do, to give everybody an opportunity to get dates that are viable for their area. Like it's really too hot in Tucson to be doing something in July, right? Might be better to do something in the north of the state in that month. So there are limits to baronial dates available on the kingdom calendar. That does not mean that you couldn't do just local events. We do lots of just local events. We do specialty things like Nightlight on a fighter practice night here in our barony. Other baronies do tournaments on their fighter practice nights. Those are smaller things that are not necessarily on kingdom calendar, but they're on the baronial calendar for consideration. So yes, talk to your seneschal. Your seneschal should have and help you find sites. If not, all 6 of us have looked at lots of sites, at least in Tucson, and we can give you a large list, right?
Throughout the kingdom.
We can do it, yeah, that's probably not wrong. So yes, you want to talk to them about what's available dates, because you want to then go to the site and see if they have available, they're available on that date. Some churches are available on Saturday, but not on Sundays, right? So if your event's for 2 days, you'd have to find some other location for your Sunday if you're thinking about doing a 2-day event. Oh gosh, I think that's good.
Can I throw something
Yes.
on that? And the question being, do you talk to the site first or your seneschal first? It is okay for you to make the initial contact, but try to keep your seneschal involved from the very beginning as much as you can, because your seneschal is the one that's going to approve and sign your contract. Your seneschal is the legal representation for your groups, and each group has their own uniqueness. And so, here in Ysgithr, our seneschal is like, yeah, if you find a site, make contact, bring me the information. But in another barony, they may want the seneschal to be the one to make that initial contact. Your seneschals are the ones that typically have the working relationship with sites that they actively use. So talk to your seneschal before you just plunge into the deep end. See what your seneschal would like you to do first, and then proceed from there.
Specifically here in Ysgithr, the seneschal is the person who talks to Park and Rec, because they get confused easily. And so our intent is not to cause confusion with the city and the park that we love and use the best. And so we have one person who talks to the one person of contact at the Park and Rec, so that the right people are having the right conversations. So again, your seneschal is going to help you in some of those areas. If your seneschal says, hey, go forth and find an event location, then make sure that you understand the parameters that which the SEA can obligate itself to participate in a site. There may be site restrictions, like some schools, if you use a school, may not allow alcohol at all. So that's a consideration you have to pay attention to, right? Some churches have limited hours for when they'll allow you to have and use their facility. So you need to kind of talk with the seneschal to know what are the right appropriate conversation items you should be having with a site location, because you could talk to them and say the wrong thing, right? You certainly don't want to make a statement about we're going to have 5,500 crazy people running around at night at your campsite, because that's not really what we do. That's not how we behave. We're very good stewards of our sites, and so talk to your seneschal to help you walk through the conversation you have with the site to choose a site. That'll help make sure that the contract that you ultimately get for the seneschal to sign is appropriate for society. Another thing you want to talk to the seneschal about is insurance. Insurance is a big deal, and if you don't get your insurance timely before your event, you will cost your organization a fine of $250, okay? Which just made your event budget a lot more expensive, which we don't want, right? You want your event budget to be viable. So you want to make sure that once you've decided on a site, you and the seneschal have decided, and the barony, if you're going to do it through the barony, have decided on a site for your location, that the paperwork and information that the seneschal needs to get your insurance started is provided to them. They're going to need some site-specific information to get that insurance submitted.
I have a question.
Okay.
What about having a second or a co-steward?
Oh,
Is that a good thing,
Sure.
or makes it more complicated?
It depends, right? It depends. Co-autocrat is somebody to help you carry the burden and the load on the event. So it can be great and wonderful. And certainly the larger that your event is, the more supporters you should have. War of the Phoenix does not function just because there are 3 mains. War of the Phoenix functions because of all of the coordinators and then all of the people who come to War of the Phoenix and give up their time on their vacation. Okay, that's how that event happens. Baronial level events are much the same way. You can be the autocrat all day long, but you need somebody to help set the Eric up, somebody to take down the Eric, someone to help steward their excellencies and their majesties into the right place under the pavilions, help put all the pavilions up and take all of that stuff down, put it all back in its perspective trailer and take it away once we're done with that event, right? So yes, multiple helpers with your autocrating is a great thing.
Thank you,
Good.
Excellency.
I think I got it right.
Yes, you did.
Next.
And actually, it was a perfect segue into, we will cover briefly budgeting, advertising, and co-stewards. I'll keep this fairly short because there is a lot of information here. And, you know, just a quick reminder, after tonight, every one of us are on Facebook. You can reach us out to us. If we didn't give you enough information tonight or you still have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to any one of us. We will be happy to help you guys. But moving into budgeting, you know, one of the things that is fabulous about our organization is we are a very generous organization. So it is very easy to put together an event with minimal cost. Your site cost, your insurance cost, some general supplies. You can get prizes donated. All of our artisans in the kingdom love an opportunity to show off what they've been doing and making. But you ask. You approach people and ask the question, could you donate for this event? Now, with that being said, the budget is very simple. In some cases, if it's a repeat event, you can look at historical data and adjust it accordingly. Your local exchequer should be able to provide that information for you. If it is a brand new event, you start with the basics. Your site, your insurance, straight up out the door. But what else are you going to need? Are you going to need supplies? Are you going to have food at your event? And if you are having food, what type of food is it? Is it going to be finger foods? Is it going to be potluck? Is it going to be a feast? That's where somebody working with you, an independent feast steward like Mistress Magdalene, comes into play for you. Because that is not something that you may want food at your event, but yeah, I don't want to be the one to cook it all. You talk to Mistress Magdalene. She can put you in touch, or in most cases, she does it herself. But, you know, just remember that budget is separate. The kingdom has a separate feast policy. Now, every policy we're talking about tonight, guys, it's listed on the Kingdom website under the document library. You can find them there. Inside this packet, I have put a couple of relevant links to event guidelines, to the budget form and event registration, but there are other links out there on the Kingdom website that you can go and pull up, which will help fill in some of the gaps that's going to happen tonight. So if you don't want to charge a $50 site fee, you don't want a $5,000 budget. Yes, ma'am.
We got a question.
Sure.
That packet, can we make it digital and online to post somewhere for everyone who's watching?
I will ask the Kingdom Seneschal if I am allowed to do that, and if so, I will be happy to make it available after he approves it. Sorry, I glitched. So bear in mind, we are a not-for-profit organization. When you are putting your event together, you want to be thinking about the fact of you want as many people in attendance as you possibly can. So can you make your site fee affordable? With that being said, what does affordable mean? The side of your costs, your insurance, and any supplies, prizes, and other things is going to affect what that site fee would be. Fairies. Okay. Hey, at least it's
Leave it
not
to
my
Mom.
ringtone.
So go ahead.
Oh, jeez, I forget about these stupid modern things.
He doesn't actually know how to turn the ringer off.
I just turned the whole thing off. Just
Yeah,
go
he
away.
doesn't actually know how to turn
Done.
the ringer off. Just so we're clear.
That's okay. Whatever works.
I am tech-tarded for anybody that knows me. So that was
So
fast
she's not the
for
one
me.
to do your budget form, okay? Don't ask Victoria to do your budget form.
Or anything that does with computers.
Yeah,
No,
mostly that.
I will wear the little tin hat and
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
How do we go?
Y'all just made me snort. Okay. Anyway, back to topic. And work with your exchequer. Your local exchequer can give you a lot of information about your budget with a lot more fill in the gaps that you may need to think about. Okay, site tokens. What is a typical prizes? Site tokens, food, site insurance.
If you have to rent equipment,
Yeah, and what we mean by that is if you have to bring in additional porta-johns, or trash receptacles, or if you're hosting a camping event, how do you dispose of your ash? These are the kind of things you have to think about when you are writing your budget, because it will affect it all. But what affects all of it completely is your advertising. I love the phrase, if you build it, they will come. 20 years ago, I would 100% agree with you. Today, you got to pump your event. I was taught when I first started playing in the Barony and stepping into all the neat, busy, crazy things to do, is the best way to get attendance is you announce your event at every court you can possibly get on the docket to announce it. Then social media come along, and we thought, oh great, I don't have to go to every event. I don't have to find a herald who's gonna hatchet up my name as he calls me into court to make my announcement. But the truth is even today I see the biggest difference in attendance when people are promoting their events in court. Talk to people, send out personal invitations. If you want fighters here, go to Twin Moons or Atenveldt or Sun Dragons fighter practice and hand out little flyers. Say, hey, we're doing a fighting event. We would love to see you down in Ysgithr. Talk about your event. Don't worry about whether or not you're talking about it too much. Talk about your event. I promise you it will make a world of difference between 80 people and 150 people at your event. So don't be afraid to promote your event. Promote it. You are its biggest cheerleader. Pull out the pom-poms. Okay? You want people to come to your event, and every event steward has this first time event. Oh my God, what if nobody shows up to my event? I know, I still have it today.
no party and nobody comes.
Yes. But the more you talk about your event, the more you promote your event, the more that anxiety will be alleviated because the word is out there. Okay? So work with your social media officer. Tonight's event, I worked with the Kingdom social media officer, Yukiko, and I told her what I wanted to do. And she has blown it out of the park for me on social media, and it has been awesome. And I am giggly excited over this turnout, I'm not gonna lie. So keep in mind, your advertising is what you put into it. You know, and then
Talk about
articles.
Writing your article.
Yes, writing your article. Okay. A lot of information. But writing your article, you need 4 major factors. Factor number 1 is, what is the event? Give us your story. Is it a fighting event? I remember a time articles used to tell
Big story.
big stories. Dragon's Horde was my favorite, you know? And at the end of your article, as you gave out everything the event was going to have, we were going to have fighting, we were going to have rapier, we were going to have an A&S display, we were going to have a dessert competition. Help me out here. Oh, the white dragon. You got a chance to fight the white dragon. And if you beat the white dragon, you got to go home with one of the dragon's gems. And as you got through this article, I've been telling you everything you were having at your event. That way everybody knew there was something for them at that event. We gave site information. What time does site open? What time does site close? Is it 1 day? Is it 2 days? What is your site fee? What is your site fee for adults? What is your site fee for children?
Members and non-members.
Yep, members and non-members. We broke it all out. Then the very next section was the clearest directions. And I want almost all of y'all to remember, those that are old enough to remember. Blake, I'm looking at you because I know it ain't you, honey. MapQuest.
I remember MapQuest.
You printed up sheets of paper to get to an event site that was in the middle of the North 40. I want your instructions in your article to read like MapQuest. Okay?
And check them, because sometimes you think you have written it correctly, and then you send everyone in the universe to the wrong or opening of that park. Some of the parks in the city, in the county, in the cities are big, and they have multiple ways to access them. Reid
Yes.
Park that we're at right now is one of those. This is a specific part of Reid Park. If you just Googled Reid Park, you would end up on the other side of this park. You would not end up here.
Yes. And that is something to keep in mind in your article, is if there's a very specific entrance you want people to come to, make certain that your entrance is identified. Almost all of the groups have signage, sandwich board signs, that's what they're called, that says SCA or Barony of Ysgithr, a variety of things, but it gives us an arrow as to where we're going. And we are not is it a Pavlovian response?
Yes.
We see the sign and we know we're in the right place. On that note about your article, also keep in mind in your article is any specific site information you think the populace needs to know. Is there ADA parking? Is it wheelchair accessible? Are service animals are allowed? If so, what is the rules on animals at the site? Is it service animals only? Is it leashed only? Is it smoking? Is it non-smoking? Is it wet?
Glass.
Is it dry? Is it glass? You know,
Fires permitted.
yep, are fires permitted?
Staking.
Staking's a good one, especially in Tucson parks. We need to know if we need to bring alternatives to staking, okay? So any of that information, I would like you to take a moment and pretend you are loading your vehicle to drive 3 hours away to go to an event. What all do you think I need to know that I need to have with me when I do that? If you think in context of how you want to pack, write your article that way, okay? I think I covered just about all of that.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, oh, yes ma'am.
There is a question about articles. Once the article is all done, to whom as event stewards should they send the article in order to communicate with all necessary channels?
Oh Lord.
They give it to this, so they're seneschal?
So initially your
Doesn't that go
article,
to social media?
well, actually, initially your article needs to be approved by the seneschal before it goes anywhere. You may have wording in there that we're not allowed to use, and your seneschal would be the one to help you clear that up and make certain that what's about to go into the public eye is exactly how it needs to be written by society and kingdom rules. From there, your event, I believe it is submissions at atenveldt.org is where, is it just Kingdom? I thought Barony has to go there too.
So I think everything has to go to that one, yes.
Yes,
And-
because of the South End.
And I would also send it to the Kingdom social media officer. And if you have questions about, are you just freely allowed to post whatever on any of the baronial Facebook pages or the TikTok or the Instagram, ask your social media officer. They will help you with guidance as to what we are allowed to post and how frequently we're allowed to post things and what are appropriate things to post. They might even be so kind as to offer to post stuff for you.
I'm also going to give you a big do not do. Do not make your own Facebook event page. You send that to social media will set that up. Once social media has that set up, they will make you a host of it. But do not set up a separate one on your own because it creates so much confusion. And again, there's rules and guidelines that we may not be aware of, that your officers are aware of. Let them cover your bases for you, just in case. Okay?
And Your Excellency, along those lines, there's not a direct universal place. They've mentioned the Seneschal, the social media, and submissions email. You also need to consider the chronicler for the kingdom or your barony or shire or college, because they have the local newsletter and the kingdom newsletter.
Now, I see we do have the Kingdom Seneschal on the chat, so I know he's watching right now.
Hello. Sure, he'll have comments
So
later.
maybe he would be happy to answer the question, is if there is one central email that would hit all of those in one shot.
He's the one that asked the question.
Right. Was he prompting us to answer, or did he not know his
I
own
think it
answer?
was a prompt.
That's okay. That's okay. But maybe he can answer that question and we can give that answer before the end of the night.
Okay.
Would be great. Now, with that being said, again, this is a lot of information and I would like to get to the other folks on the panel. I'm going to actually turn it over to Countess Golda to talk about how crowns and cornets can affect your event.
Hello, everybody. I was asked to do the more touchy-feely part of our group. It is both an art and a science to work with your royalty and your nobility. And the big thing that you have to keep in mind is they're your partner, but they're also your boss. So you are like the wedding coordinator, but you're also the mother of the bride. You have a stake in what's happening and you have more say in it than you realize. But you also always have to bring it back to whomever is the nobility or royalty in charge of your event. If you're doing a kingdom level event, it always has to go back to the crown. What does the crown want to see at their event? If the crown wants something in particular, you want to make it happen for them. The best way to do that is to reach out to them. People have, for some reason, a fear of their royals and their nobility without realizing that it's really just them with a fancy hat on. There's nothing separating us other than we did a job and now we can help you do your job. And that's really what we're here for. Everybody on this panel has kind of the spirit of the leader is the first place servant. So when you need help, they're the people to ask. Make sure that you are keeping them in the loop for what sites you'd like to do, what type of feast you would like to do. If you are interested in something super fancy, when is the best time to have that something fancy happen is going to come from conversations that you have with the people who are leading the event. But always keep in mind, it's your event. You're the person who's putting in hours and hours and hours of work to put this together. So make sure you're putting together something that you're going to be proud of at the end of the day. If you want to be, I'm trying to think of the polite way to put this. If you want to be more bossy, you can go to the crown and say, "Crown, this is what I'm doing." I bet you're going to be real excited about it. And 90% of the time they are, because they're so pleased with your enthusiasm and your excitement and your forethought. So don't be afraid to stand up and say, "I want to do this. This is what I have in mind for my event." If they need to reel you in a little bit, they will. And then in the position that I was in when I kept getting reeled, back in, you trot off to your peer and you say, hey peer, I wanted to do this and the crown wouldn't let me. And then your peer tells you how to take that feedback, or they tell you how to go back to the table to get what you want. Don't be afraid to use anybody as your peer. We are the kingdom's peers, we're the society's peers, and we'll help anybody with anything.
Ask the royals what they need.
Yeah. Another big piece is keep in mind when you're talking with your royals, when you're talking with your nobility, is to find out what they need at the event. So I have had, as my position as royal liaison, the incoming royals have said, I want to elevate somebody on the field at Estrella. Oh, okay, Ethelmark, let's see what we can do for you. And so then you are, in fact, that liaison, that person who's working between. You go to your crown and say, hey, crown, this is what the Kingdom of Atenveldt wants to do. This is what I'm hearing out of Caid. So you can be the person who goes back and forth between the royals or puts them in contact with each other to make sure everybody can get what they want out of the event. I wrote notes for myself because I'm really bad. There's two more big things that I wanted to talk about. The first one is balance. You want to make sure that you're balancing your communication in a way that isn't overwhelming, but is still keeping them in the loop. Reaching out once a month as you're building up to the event is one thing. Reaching out once a month when it's time for the event is never going to work for you. You want to step up that communication at that point, make sure they're still on board, make sure nothing has come up. The day of, make sure that you reach out to them and make sure everything is still on target. Is there anything they need? Sometimes what they need is for you to pick up a cup of coffee for them because they've got 40 things they're trying to do to get to your event, and your event can't happen without them. So a cup of coffee versus being an hour late, I'll stop for that coffee every time. And the last one is think about your relationship with the royals. Is it your baroness at your event in your barony? Is it your B&B traveling to another barony to hold an event that you are responsible for? Are you expecting a lot of travel for the people who are coming in to visit with you? I'm trying to be brief, but there's so many little pieces to keep in mind. And it really is a balancing act. It is being polite but being firm. It's making sure you get what you want, but also make sure that you put together something that other people want to come to. And just being friendly.
Go ahead.
I have a question.
Hit it.
When getting your site, are there certain considerations you need to take into account for royalty and or the hats, like ready rooms or
Right.
what?
When you are putting together an event, stop to think about what the people that are coming are going to need. Sometimes the crown needs a space where they can stop and sign scrolls that's outside of the view of the public. Sometimes, depending on how long the event is, they need a place to walk away. Being on stage all day long is very wearying, and some people, it is more than they are able to do, and they just need to be able to step aside and be polite. So a place that they can go and be quiet is always a good idea. If it's a camping rural event, what did you set aside for them? Did they bring something for themselves? If it's a one-day event in the park, where can they go? What do they need? Another good thing is to set aside a loading and offloading, loading and onloading. Nope, those are the same word. Putting the stuff in and out of the car.
You had it right.
That's
Loading
what we're
and
looking
offloading.
for. Loading and offloading. Do they need a special place to park their car, their truck? Do they have a special trailer that's come with them to haul all of the things we need to have a beautiful event? What special thing do they need at the site? Did I cover?
And room for circles, if maybe they
Yes.
decide.
Keep in mind that again, the Kingdom calendar is planned an entire year before it actually happens.
Right.
Right? And so as the new crown comes on and wins the tournament, they're now faced with, okay, everybody wants to know when the first circle starts. right? So they have to look at what is the planned out calendar and pick an event that might be feasible to do circles at. So don't be surprised if you are 5 or 6 months away from 4 or 5 months out from your event starting, and you get a call from the Crown asking if there is a way that you could make room for them to have a circle. That could always happen to you.
48 hours.
And
Yeah.
And just so you know, when you say that is something that could happen to you, that's something, bless you, Crown, because now you have just doubled the people that are coming to your event. Because now all of those peers are going to come and they're going to bring all of their assistants and all of their family. So your event attendance has just slowly blossomed like a flower in the desert. It's lovely. I had that happen. I was like, yes, because my pre-reg was real small until then, and then it just doubled overnight almost. So it's okay. Another thing to think about is to make sure you understand the times that your royals and your nobility want to hold court. Is court going to be twice for your event? Is it going to be one time for your event? Is your barony going to host the event that the Crown is coming to? So you have a court in the morning and a court in the afternoon, and then the Crown is going to take over one of those two or both. It depends on their timing. Are they coming to more than one event? We've had that happen where the Crown has come down for an event and then driven back to Atenveldt or to Sundragon to have a second event in the evening so that they could see more of their populace. So we want to make sure that we are creating a welcoming space for them to be able to get whatever they need out of your event. Anything else, guys? I feel like I've been talking a whole bunch.
You've done great.
Are we good?
You've done great.
All right, then there's no more questions for me?
Not
Is
at
there
the
a
moment.
question? All right, then I'm done.
Okay. So that leads us over into, I'm going to turn it over to Sir Ruin to talk to you guys about your equipment needed for an event, whether it's a fighting eric, thrones, chairs, tables, and I'm going to let him take that over because there's a whole lot to that logistics that you don't think about until you're standing in the middle of a field and you go, oh my God, I forgot the fighting eric. What do I do now? Sir Ruin?
My turn. All right. So my section here is euphemistically called logistics. Welcome to Schlepping 101. So it breaks down what, where, and how. Simple questions, but it gets complicated. Trust me, it's been complicated before. So things that you need to look at for your event. Equipment, tents, and structures. SCA, we come with a lot of gear. You need to get it to the site, you need to get away from the site. And so equipment, what equipment do you have? What equipment do you need to bring in? Beg, borrow, plead, mortgage your first child. Let's see, where are we
only
going
did
here?
that once.
Okay, we're going downhill quick. All right, tents. Are you going to be setting up tents? Is staking permitted in that area? Is always a big consideration now, especially since Parks and Rec's policies have been changing. You need to make sure that that's the specific site owner is allowing us to stake. And that will change what equipment you bring. Other structures, Ysgithr and I believe Granite Mountain, they do have Granite Mountain.
Has a tent.
They built their own eric. Perfect. Awesome. Glad they did that. We do have a fighting eric. We do have tables, chairs. Are you many times at war practices? We have a soup kitchen for the fighters. What about that equipment? Who's bringing that equipment? How can they unload? How can they load it back up again? How can they access the site to move equipment in and out? Again, Schlepping 101. Site loading, unloading, the approaches and departures of your site. Are you going to be asking people pulling trailers in and out of site to be crossing a 5-lane highway? That's a consideration. Make sure that that is looked at. It's, let's see. So if you are responsible for bringing this equipment to site yourself, how are you going to do that? Do you have trucks? Do you have trailers? Do you have people with trucks? Do you have people with trailers? Do you have the equipment to move the equipment, to set the equipment up? I think I've got all the questions
Yep.
in there. Excellent.
So, Sir Ren, where would you get this equipment from? Does it
Well-
Who
just...
would you ask?
Well, I own all my own equipment, so I ask myself. Pardon?
All right, fine. Everybody ask Ruin for equipment.
Okay.
Got it?
You are a dead
quartermaster.
Anyway,
Guys, we need to pause for this
Yep.
massive plane.
see one
Oh,
dirty coming over.
Time out.
He's kind of quiet. He's gonna
It
get
is
loud.
kind of
He's gonna
quiet.
get loud here in a second.
Yeah.
Usually they do.
There it is.
Actually, I think that would just make a liar out of all of us.
Yeah. Won't be the first time, won't be the last time. So on your site, when you look at your site, again, royalty, if you have visiting royalty, do they have a place to park and unload? Because they're going to have equipment also to bring in. Yes, your approach. Going back to obtaining the vehicles and trucks and trailers to handle the equipment you're bringing in. If it's a baronial event, go to your baron and baroness. Talk to them. Hey, who has a truck and trailer that I can contact and make arrangements with? That's a very good, a good site, a good place right there to start off with. When you go to events, who has a truck and trailer that's bringing event equipment already? Check in with them. Ask them. The earlier, the better. The sooner you make contact with them and ask them, if they have to say no, they're not attending that event or whatever reason they have, you can go off to the next person. Keep in mind, this is very similar to asking your friend with a pickup to help you move.
That's true.
This is very, very similar. So the earlier you get with them and make arrangements with them, the better. I'm not sure about the budgeting on this, but if you have absolutely no choice, could you rent a U-Haul and work that into the event budget?
I have a question. Yeah,
Possibly,
I've seen it happen.
but not
Yeah.
possible, but not optimal.
It really kind of depends upon where the equipment's coming from, i.e. in Ysgithr, our Fighting Eric is in the baronial trailer, which is always at one of our local events. Our tent is in the baronial trailer, rebar, rope, all that kind of stuff is already in the baronial trailer. So when the baronial trailer hits site, we have 90% of what we already need. Anything extra that isn't in the baronial trailer, you work with the regalia officer to get it out of the storage unit if the barony already owns it.
Okay.
But I have seen, like the College of St. Felix, they've rented a U-Haul to haul their stuff to Australia War because a bunch of college kids, not all of them have a pickup truck.
No.
Most of them don't have cars. Most of them don't have cars.
Possible, but not optimal is,
Yes.
is a rental type situation.
Correct.
For bringing equipment in. So that leads me right into it takes a village to raise a village. All right, we're talking about your setup crew and your breakdown crew. You need to coordinate hands to make sure you have the equipment set up. You need to coordinate hands to make sure you can tear that equipment down. Because when the event is done and we're all packing up and getting out, that's when you want to have people that know they're supposed to stay there to help you break this down, put it away, and get it back to where it needs to go. Helicopter.
Louder than the airplane.
So when your event site opens up, you need to have your equipment there ready to go. So that means you need to plan your travel times, and if you need to stop for a cup of coffee for the visiting royalty or anybody like that, make sure that's all worked into your plan for your arrival time. If you're flailing and in a rush and in a hurry and you smoke yourself right into sight and you're in a rush, you're going to forget things. So you can plan ahead and make your site setup a little more sane, just a little bit more sane, by being a little bit early or on time or a little bit early, and have it all there ready to go, ready to rock and roll. The other consideration on time is, does your site have a drop dead time? Does your site have a time that you need to have everything off the site? That's a major consideration there as well. You need to, 2 hours to break down generally most events? It depends.
The bigger the event, the longer it takes.
The bigger the event, the longer it takes. The more stuff you have to set up, the more if you need to move it fast, make the announcements that, hey, we need hands, we need help. They usually have the event autocrats up in court for announcements, either an opening court, closing court, if not both. So use that time to your advantage. I need help. We need to get this stuff off this site by, say, 5 p.m. And here we are at 4:45, so all hands on deck. And my last point that I wanted to make is, make sure that you budget in, if you have a long trip to transport equipment, budget in fuel for your vehicles. It's expensive. So make sure you budget in some fuel for your vehicles that you have to go back and forth. I guarantee you, if you need to ask somebody to help you move your stuff and you say, I have budgeted in fuel, so let me know what your fuel costs are, that will go a long ways towards making people happier for helping you out. What'd I miss?
One thing.
Yes.
Is there a question?
There is, but go ahead.
Okay, so one thing. Crown tourney. We love our crown tourney to be beautiful. It makes us all so happy, right? Again, as we've mentioned once before, the Barony of Ysgithr has a Eric, fighting Eric, as does Granite Mountain. Okay? If you're going to autocrat a crown tourney, it is a great idea for you to reach out to those two baronies and ask them to bring the Erics for you. Do not assume that those are magically going to show up on site for you. And you should, as part of your budget, plan to pay for the gas for one of those baronies to haul the Erics to wherever you're going, because that's only kind and generous. But I promise you, you will be very disappointed if you don't make those phone calls ahead of time and make an assumption that those Erics are magically going to appear, because they often will, but sometimes they're broken or in repair and they're not available. So check first, don't assume.
And I would like to add to that those Erics belong to their respective baronies. They do not belong to the kingdom. So if you would like to borrow one of the baronies' equipments, you gotta make a phone call and ask to borrow that barony's equipment.
And if you're running a kingdom event, the kingdom has a lot of property. They have storage units for a lot of that property, and they also have a trailer. But sometimes the crown isn't planning on having their steward bring the trailer, or they're not planning to bring the kingdom tents. So that goes back to what Countess Golda was saying about making sure that you've communicated with them, so that you don't assume they'll be bringing something they weren't planning to bring. Or if you would like them to bring it, if you ask them well in advance, they usually will make it happen. The question I had for you, Saruan, was lighting and electricity and amenities of the site. Because a lot of times you'll get to like Empire Ranch. It's a primitive site. So what do you do in those situations?
Okay, so if you're dealing with a primitive site and you look, and it looks like you're going to need fighting at that event, that gets a little communicative. You have to find out who has either battery-powered lights or preferably a very quiet generator to provide those lights. So you need to reach out and you need to start communicating with, if it's a local event, start with your Baron Baroness. They have a really good idea on who has what in their local group, and start with the local group of the event that you're working with, and they can start pointing you in the right direction to solve that issue.
And I only ask that because it happened once to me at a Southern Crusades that when I was Baroness, we held a court in pitch black darkness. We managed it, but it was awkward. And it was just because none of us, from the top to all down the line, none of us thought about it until darkness fell, and it was too late.
Well, I think that court ran a little late.
But that's the problem. None of us thought about it.
It's like an SCA people don't have.
And actually,
Right.
Yukiko, did you say we had a question?
We had a
Yeah,
question.
the first question is, how do we get the permission to take or tow official SEA equipment with our personal vehicles?
That is a very good question for the
I-
Seneschal.
Yes.
Guess who asked that
is-
question?
Order that. So you're gonna reach. So if you're gonna borrow something from the Barony and you're helping to coordinate an event in Mons to Nitrous, right? You would want to coordinate that with the Seneschal of the Barony, right? The B&B, so everybody knows that they're going to give you the baronial tent, or they're going to give you whatever piece of baronial equipment, regalia, that you're going to then take with you to that other event.
I would also suggest that if you're volunteering your vehicle and you're going to tow something, that you check your insurance policy. A lot of the insurance policies will allow for you to tow a vehicle or a trailer that is not in your name and it's not licensed or registered to you. But they will want to know what the value is of what you're hauling if they need to go and replace it. So if you are going to tow on behalf of an SCA entity, make sure that your insurance, personal insurance, is going to cover it.
You also need to, the stuff that goes through regalia, and to taking the trailer and towing has to all go through the Seneschal, so we can verify that our insurance, the SEA insurance, will cover you as well. Back to the U-Haul topic though, any U-Haul rental is a contract, because it is a contract that's got to go through the Seneschal's office. So everything starts and stops with your Seneschal. Your Seneschal is your number one go-to for almost anything you're talking about here. But one of the things about equipment is, if nobody around you knows, hey, does anybody have solar lights? You can always put a call out to the Barony as well, and one of the populace members may volunteer to help you out if that's what you're looking for. So you're not just pigeonholed to only dealing with the baronial officers. You can reach out to everybody in the populace as well. So keep that in mind. Are we good?
Another question?
Yeah.
Another
All
question?
the questions?
No,
No questions?
we're good.
We're
Feasties now.
No more questions?
Question? Yes.
Oh no.
Hello, Your Excellencies.
Hello.
I believe that over the last several weeks, I've had a conversation with each of you about peer fear and new people and how we combat that.
Everybody grab their hats. Everybody grab their hats. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Is this an abdication, an
No,
unmasked?
No.
This is a piece of metal, or this is a fluffy thing.
So,
Okay.
in
My
continuing
pants go
that
on one leg at a
theme
time.
of the conversations that we have had over the last several weeks, what advice would you guys give to somebody who's only been playing for a little while, but is coming into Autocrat an event, and their partners in the Crown or Coronet are less than cooperative or intent on maybe overseeing that a little too closely?
I would say, again, what Thera mentioned is your seneschal. The seneschal works with them all the time. They know what the rules are, so to speak, and they know if someone's, not following the proper protocol, and they can assist you. And they're a good bridge. That's what I would say.
I would also keep in mind, and the reason we all just took those pieces of metal off of our head is we are just like you guys. Just like you.
We just get to wear a fancy hat, that's all.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Reagan. I own an accounting firm and an RV storage out in Benson, Arizona. I have 5 children, 3 daughters and 2 sons. I'm married to the redhead at the end of the table. And by the way, don't be an ounce surprised if you see me running around an event barefooted and playing in the mud, because that has been known to happen. We're just like everybody else, guys, but we want to help y'all. We want to. We would love it for you to come up and say, Thera, how do I do X? I don't know. Let's go figure it out together. Let's go talk to the seneschal and see what the seneschal wants us to do, and then we'll figure out the rest of it.
Another way to do it is usually new people are brought to the SCA by friends or family, or they sometimes wander in and find us on their own. But usually before you're ready to run an event, or you think you're ready to run an event, you usually talk to people. So if you have made friends with someone, it doesn't matter what their rank or stripe is, ask them to come along with you if you're going to talk to the king or you're going to talk to your baroness. And usually your friends are happy to support you. So and they're often the people who are helping you run an event. So take, power and comfort in numbers. So do it that way. That's another option. Yeah.
Another thing to keep in mind is, and you'll see this a lot with your dog. If you're not in control, your dog is. And I don't mean to say that the panel up here is a bunch of dogs, but if you are struggling with them trying to take control of the event from you, they're not being a good partner with you, it might be because they feel your lack of experience is a hinder, and they might not have the confidence that they need in you. And it's a hard thing to do, but kind of build your courage up and ask them. I'm trying to understand what's happening here. I want to make sure that I'm being a good partner with you, but I feel like I'm not being heard in this conversation. What can I do to help you communicate at my level? And if you're super new and that's super hard, find that friend, find that person that you're communicating with, and ask them to go with you for moral support. You will, and I hate it, but you will always feel ganged up on if you're already feeling anxious. If the crown is there and it's just the king, it's just the king. Are you kidding me? No, it's not just the king. Is it just the seneschal? Well, this is the person in charge of everything. He's our executive officer. What? You're always going to feel like you're at a power imbalance in that situation. So bringing along a friend for moral support is not a bad idea.
And there's kind of a mythology about the SCA. You will have, as Reagan has said, you have experience outside of this activity, outside of this society. You bring that with you. Don't leave it at the door. So if you coordinate people in a hospital 24 hours a day and then you have a week off or whatever it is, let them know, hey, I do this in my modern life. How can I apply that to what I'm doing in the SCA? And then you suddenly find out, like, I am a public defender. I found out who all the lawyers are who are in the SCA. And it was just because I talked about it, and then they were like, oh, hey, I do divorce work. Oh, hey, we know who the plumbers are. We know who do the accounting. We know who run restaurants. We know who have equipment. We know who are electricians. I mean, you start to network in the game or the SCA as you would network in your modern world. So.
I do need to make a correction real quick. going back to the insurance for the trailers. I said that wrong. When you are towing SCA equipment, trailers, with your personal vehicle, your personal insurance must cover it. So, I didn't get that correction. I want to make certain that was out there for everybody. We're about to roll into food. Yes, we are. All right.
I'm remiss. Is it my turn?
It is your turn. Roll
All
with
right.
it.
So I did not bring snacks tonight, and I apologize, but I was not asked to bring snacks.
My bad.
Yes, on Magdalene. No. So, but I do have some information to talk to you all about food and feasts at events. So, every event has people come to it. People need to eat during the course of an 8-hour event. Sometimes there's no budget for food. So, you may say, we would ask you all to be on your own for lunch, and if you're at a site that has various establishments close by, the seneschal or the event steward might provide a list of the restaurants in the local area so that people know where they can go to get food. You might say, we're going to be at a park and it's a lovely time of year, bring your own picnic and maybe bring some to share. We often will suggest that people do potluck. As an aside, I learned very early on in the society, a potluck ain't a feast, but it is a potluck. And you still, as an event steward, should work to coordinate so that you actually have a lot of different dishes brought in instead of just bags of chips and maybe some salsa. So it helps as an event steward to get someone else to coordinate a potluck. And that's not a lot of work, but it can be, depending on how elaborate you want to be. Earlier, Mistress Tigra talked about Fop Revel. In the old days, and I mean 20, 30 years ago, we used to have a potluck that was so renowned, people did consider it a feast because roast turkeys were brought, and full casseroles, and homemade bread. We had what they call a groaning board. It was so heavy and laden with food that there was a variety, and there was enough for the carnivores and enough for the vegetarians. But those days have ebbed and waned because we've had time pass and we haven't been training folks how to coordinate a potluck. So sometimes you want to do it alphabetically, sometimes you want to ask different groups or households to bring certain things. Sometimes you might look to the Baron and Baroness and the Seneschal or your Shire Seneschal and ask, can the group provide the main dish? So you might have, again, going with roast turkey as an example, you might have the Barony support bringing 6 roast turkeys and ask everyone else to bring the side dishes and the desserts. Every event, as an event steward, you want to make sure there is water available for people to drink, and or, because we're in Arizona, the land of the sun, Atenveldt is hot. Even sometimes in the winter time, it's too warm when we're out at a tournament day. So coordinating with folks who help supply beverages is a good thing. There are locations that we use that allow alcohol, but the groups cannot provide alcohol. They cannot provide the finances for it, and the Baron and Baroness, if they were, for example, to provide alcohol, it would need to be privately and not requiring any reimbursement because the SCA cannot purchase alcoholic beverages. Not everyone, and the SCA can't purchase the food either. If you have a feast, for example, it has to have a separate budget from the site. Everyone shares the site, but not everyone will necessarily share the food. And that may be because their dietary needs, it may be because they don't like what's being served. There's a variety of reasons that even I have days where I may not eat the feast that is happening at the event. So the feast is supported by the folks who are eating it. So that means you have to plan further in advance, and you have to have a budget for that. You need to consider that if your feast is $20 a person, you may not be able to have a lot of folks who can afford that. You may be able to find a way to have a sponsor or a donor support your feast and donate money or, again, certain items. It's important, again, all the folks at this table and anyone you ask can direct you to someone who knows, hey, if you go to this particular location, they have group rates, or, you know, if you're buying in bulk, you might be able to get a better price on something. You have folks who have their own farms in our group or their own gardens, and they sometimes will donate. I had the good fortune of having one of our members, Lady Ison. She said, I will brew your wine and bottle it for your event, but I need you to provide me the sugar and the fruit. Sugar is expensive. I provided her those things, and I did not charge the event for that because it was alcohol she was making. But we were able then to have, at the 40th anniversary of the Barony of Ysgithr, we were able to have a strawberry wine and a raspberry wine to offer as largesse to the attendees of the feast. Going along those lines, though, I did not coordinate with the event steward when I was running that feast. And so the site was a church that did not allow us to have alcohol served on the premises or imbibed on the premises. So we had all this wine that we couldn't serve. We gave the bottles away to everyone who were willing and happy to take it, but we couldn't serve it. The other thing that we didn't plan on, and that's just, again, something that goes with this coordination, that if you're doing the food, working with an event steward, you guys should work together. If you're the event steward and you want to have a feast, definitely communicate with your feast steward. A lot of times, in that particular instance, again, we had a lovely site. It was a lot of space, a lot of fun. We had a tournament during the day. We had a lot of folks attend. We did not take into consideration that the sexton of the church, he takes care of the property, he came up to us and said, why are you all still here? You're supposed to be done at 9 o'clock at night. And we had everyone still there eating. And we hadn't coordinated the information, and so we had to stop the feast. Everyone threw in to clean it up, but we couldn't continue with a feast that went for a very long time. Lesson learned. If you are going to run a feast, keep in mind that, yes, in the Middle Ages, feasts went on and on. In the modern world, people are not comfortable sitting more than a couple of hours. And that's just honest. It doesn't take 2 hours to eat. And so you will want to make sure that you consider those things. You may want to, if you're running a feast, consider entertainment. And as the feast steward, you may wish to have someone be the entertainment coordinator. You may want someone to be the head of the front of the house, who they announce the dishes, they make sure everyone's getting served properly, so that whoever's in the kitchen can make sure the food is prepared and the food gets out. So think of a feast like a restaurant, and that your feast attendees are your customers. And if you think of it that way, you'll have a better time of it. But you also have to communicate with the event steward, because the site may not have a full kitchen. I have cooked in 3 separate kitchens where the ovens didn't work properly. And finding out the day of is inconvenient, to say the least. If you say, well, feasts sound like way too much work, way too difficult. There are ways, again, I mentioned potluck and I mentioned feasts, but one of the things we do with the article in advance is we let people know that they may bring their own food for sideboard. That may be because, again, dietary restrictions, or it may be because the feast is too expensive, or because they don't know who's cooking. That's not always comfortable for folks. So it's important that you allow for space for people to bring their own food. And you need to make sure that the folks who are paying for feasts have a place to sit as well. So you need to think about the tables, the equipment again. You may talk to someone and say, we're going to be at a park and we're going to have an outdoor feast, but we need shade and we need tables and we need chairs. Or you may need to ask everyone to bring their own chairs. Some events we have what we call auctions. So we might ask people to bring a basket for auction, and then the group will make a little money for, you bring bread and butter and honey and jam, and you have a bread basket that is for auction. And then whoever purchased that has the ability to eat it all themselves, or they can share with others. So you would want to specify, we want food baskets. Sometimes you have auctions without food, but food baskets if that's what your intention is. And then you again want to communicate with the royalty and or nobility, because if you have a feast that you're cooking and the food is time sensitive because the soup needs to be served while it's hot, or the dessert will melt if it's outside too long or whatnot, then you need to coordinate with them and say, is it possible that we can start as close to 6 p.m. as possible? We were just at Northern Yule last week. The feast stewards asked us to please finish court at about 5:30 because they wanted to put the appetizers out and get the food started. We were 15 minutes off. We started at 5:45. But because that communication happened, we were able to close that gap. Again, in many years past, we have had it be where the feast was held for 2 hours. Everybody's hungry, including those who were running court. But there were elevations and other things that happened in court that took time. So you coordinate with the folks who are running the event, talk to and communicate with the populace. I do recommend now to make, if you can, a list of the ingredients you're using in each dish so that folks can see if it's something they can or should not eat. If last weekend's event, they said our kitchen contains nuts, so that people with nut allergies knew in advance they probably did not want to partake of that feast. But if you can accommodate vegetarian diners, do so. If you can accommodate gluten-free diners, do so. Vegan is difficult, but even vegan, if you're able to help out, everyone wants to participate in the experience of a feast. So if you can communicate that with them in advance, usually accommodations can be made. So again, just speak to people and remember, it's like you're hosting at your own home. You want to provide good food for good times and make everybody feel welcome. So thank you.
Can I add a couple of things?
Absolutely.
If you guys are gonna have a grill master, there's a couple of things to keep in mind when having a grill master. The grill has to be prepped before, and it has to have time to cool down before it can be loaded up and taken home. That doesn't mean to keep your meat grilling all the way up through the close of sight. You've got to have time to deal with that grill at the end. The other thing you want to keep in mind is set your grill up in a place that some of our boys won't walk past and decide to help themselves for a taste test. Yes, that has happened. And I mention that not because I think it's hilarious when the guys do that to me, because I just slap them with a wooden spoon and send them on their way. We are in modern times. We are a public corporation. It will not be long before we could possibly be looking at food handler regulations. Phoenix already has. This is something we got to keep an eye out from the Kingdom Seneschal and the local Seneschals, because this could 100% affect what we've been doing. So right now, it isn't a requirement. It could be a requirement in our future.
So that goes back to the question that's been posted. Are there any food safety regulations surrounding food service as of right now to be aware of?
Yes, there are. So in Maricopa County, a lot of the issues are now that they require a food handler's license. But the Seneschals are working with the event stewards and the feast stewards on that. If you have a caterer's license, some of the halls we use require a caterer and someone who is licensed. So we used to actually have kind of communication of who those folks were in our group. Along those lines, if you say, well, I'd like food there, but I don't want to have to haul out a grill or have someone who's cooking on site, you can work with food trucks who have all of their equipment and will be a vendor selling their food. If you do that, you need to communicate with the Seneschal and your exchequer so that you're contracting their time to appear from a certain hour to another hour, or whatever it is. And then you have to advertise. Because if you don't let the populace know that there's food truck there, they will come find out that very few people are spending money at their food truck, and then they may not have good things to say about the SCA, or they may never want to come back. But if you say, we have 2 different food trucks, and here's the different options, here's their menu online, please, we would ask you to share, and actually if you want to eat with their food, please do. And if they get good customer service, they give good customer service, they'll want to come back. And it's great to not have to leave site to go find food if a food truck is there that's going to help us out. So that's just a thing.
So the simplest answer is it depends upon the county. Your county regulations are going to set that out. The one person or the group of people that's going to know that is your Seneschals. Go back to your Seneschals each time, okay? So that leads us. Oh, yes, ma'am.
I just have a silly question. Does anybody know if there were actually vegan people in medieval times?
I'm certain we could do some research on it, but for what it's worth, there are feast and fast days because of religious reasons. So often they did not eat meat at all on certain days, and so people ate vegan style meals or vegetarian style meals. And then of course the well-off folks had more access to the game and or to cattle and other poultry and so forth, and there were lots of restrictions on hunting in Western Europe at least. So the regular everyday folk often had what they could fish or what they could hunt, and if they couldn't do that, then it's what they could grow. So there's a lot of actual paperwork and books and treatises, but it wasn't like it is today. I'm certain there are people of many religious orders, for their own pious reasons, will have certain dietary needs.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'd like to get to Viscountess Victoria, because wars and ANS is a lot of information, but I would still like to have enough time to get more questions on the table. So I'd like to turn it over to Viscountess Victoria. How do we run a war?
Okay. Well, the nice thing about going last is that a lot of stuff's been covered. So that makes it a little bit easier. However, wars are a whole different animal. The first thing you have to ask yourself is, if you want an autocrat, is why? And that's a very legit question. So after your psych eval, sit down and say, what's the motives? You are going to dedicate almost a full year of your life. And as you get closer to the war, you're going to be looking at close to 20 to 30 hours a week that you're putting in. So you really have to ask, what's going to motivate me to do this massive event? Why am I doing this? So I will tell you, on 29, it was a total fluke. I had not asked myself that question, had never intended to ask myself that question. And the Crown at the time said, I said, well, how's the war effort going at this fighter practice? And the answer was, we didn't have anybody put in for mains. Well, that's totally unacceptable to a pelican. I mean, what we do is we see a need and we fill it. So, needless to say, my cohorts got war hooped, wine, dined, and war hooped. So the second year, having done the first year and figured out exactly what we were doing,
We did.
yeah, sort of. So
We got
what
better.
we found out on the second year was that there is a reason, and there are great rewards when you take on this massive of a project. You really test your mettle. You test how well you communicate. Ah, it's not me! Okay, so how well you communicate. But you really take a look at it and you say, you know, you're driving, it's 2 in the friggin' morning, you've answered your third call of the night already, but you're going past and you're listening to the parties, and you're listening to people have fun, and you go by and there's a campfire, and you're listening to the "Nope, there I was" stories, and people are in camaraderie. They are having a ball. We had a theme on one year that was one ward to bring them all, and so we had an archery shoot, and we used the characters of the hobbits and stuff. And we drive by randomly on the cart and we hear, I shot in the... It's like, yes! So it makes it all worth it when you actually get to see and work with people that you would normally work with, and you get to have that camaraderie, and you get to see the intricate workings, and there's an immense satisfaction when that happens, which you don't know if you've never done a work. So that is what I would say right off the bat. Ask yourself why, because you're in for a long haul. Okay? So, all right, let's say I passed my psych eval and I want to do a war. What's the next thing? Well, the next thing is you're going to have to choose your team. The Astoria War, or even Baron's War, any of the wars have partners. Okay? It is critical. In Baron's War, it was the site, and each barony rotated every year. So it was a different barony that ran Baron's War with a consistent site. At Astoria, it's several mains. There's no way one person has the ability to manage this type of event. Okay? So when you choose your team, you choose them on what are they bringing to the table? What is going to make the perfect dream team that can cover all of these complex issues? So when you pick that team, now you're going to do like a little resume, and you're going to send it in to KFC and to the Crown, and I don't mean chicken. I always thought KFC just was like Kentucky Fried Chicken. Really? How do you get that? Okay, so it's your financial committee. It's your Kingdom Financial Committee. So you are going to take your qualifications and your co-main's qualifications. You're going to throw in your vision of what you think the war should look like, and you're going to submit a budget. Now that is really entertaining when you've never done the war. You're like, and how many golf carts do I need? And they're going to cost me what? It gets really interesting. Luckily, you have past budgets that you can take a look at it and adjust for inflation, etc. So you're going to present this to the Crown, and you're going to present it to the KFC, and your name may be with 3 or 4 other people all asking to be mains as well. Okay? And they're going to give you an answer. So what are you responsible for? So take a minute and think about the war. Think about how many different positions and how many people it takes. It's insane. So the first thing you want to do is you want to familiarize yourself, if you're a main, with Kapora and Kingdom law. You are going to be put in a spot where a question's going to come to you and you're going to be like, I don't know, I think so. Okay? Your Kingdom Seneschal, and this is a belated for you, is your best bud. Okay? Because you're going to be frustrated 3 in the morning when this person has been addressed 5 times and you want to throw them off site. And you've got to go to your Seneschal. Oh. Okay? Your Kingdom Seneschal is going to answer the questions that you can't answer, but you have to know that they need to be addressed to begin with. Does that make sense? So you need to understand the law of the land that you're going to deal with. You need to understand the budget to a degree, and you're going to submit that budget. And they're going to hack and slash and decide what you are actually going to get for a budget. So you may not get, I mean, it's not like you get to write your check, which would be really lovely. You're like, I have these great plans, and it's okay? And that's the reality of it. Okay? You are going to have and understand site and vendor contracts. Because you're contracting for everything. The kingdom doesn't own porta pots. It doesn't own humongous shade pavilions that are going to supply the entire war. It doesn't take care of all of the things that you need on site. Okay? So they're contracts. Tigra does this for her living is contracts for the government. So she is my go-to for contracts because she's well versed in reading the contract and making sure that verbiage is correct. You are responsible for the administrative duties, which means you have to figure out how are you going to coordinate all these million coordinators. How are you going to do your meeting structure? So when we did it, we had 2 major events and 2 major meetings. And then between the 3 of us, we went to every single baronial event and talked one-on-one with our coordinators. Okay? In the War of the Phoenix, it's virtual. So if you live in Phoenix, you can attend the meeting, or if you can drive the 2 hours to get there after work and still make the meeting by 7, you can attend in person. If not, it's going to be a Zoom meeting. Okay? So that works. It has its own little glitches, which is hilarious. You're not sure on Zoom who the people that are in attendance who are talking. So you have to have a system to identify who your speakers are and that everybody isn't talking over each other and happening at the same time. There's logistics with dealing with Zoom. You also have me, who missed 2 meetings because I couldn't figure out how to do it on the phone. And if I wasn't in front of my computer and I tried to do it on my stupid little laptop thing, I could figure out how to do it. So, I mean, sometimes, you know, not everybody has the same level of technical skill, okay? But you have to figure out, are you going to have monthly meetings? Are you going to have quarterly meetings? Everything has to be recorded. Are you going to have somebody that's their job as an administrator is to write down everything happening in those meetings? Because I'll tell you, if you're running the meeting, you're not going to have time to take those notes, okay? So you're responsible for that and your reporting. You have a final report you have to do. You are reporting to the Kingdom Seneschal. You are reporting to the Crown. So you have to have all of this figured out. Site management. You have this massive site. Okay, so you may have to find a site. You may have a site from the previous year. You, regardless of that, have to deal with the modern authorities. So that town or that city or that county has their specific rules. So you want to go to that meeting, and you will go to that meeting. Sometimes the Seneschal comes with you, sometimes they do not. And you are going to discuss things like with the fire marshal, your ingress, egress for their vehicles. How wide are your fire lanes? Does all the different food vendors meet the qualifications for their propane and their fuel and their generators and etc.? You are going to talk to the city council on ingress and egress for traffic. Okay, so because you're coming in with 3,000, 3,500, 6,000 people, how are you going to get them in and out of that site without disrupting all of their normal traffic that happens? It's just some of the things that you're going to have a discussion with. They're going to want to know your emergency procedures for evacuation. Okay? So there's a lot that you're going to deal with that. And it's something most people don't think of when they think of the war. It's like, okay, I have my site. Well, yeah, but you're in a town or a city, and they have their own rules. Human resource recruitment, management, and mentoring. So that's huge. First of all, you have to have emotional intelligence. You have to be able to mentor your coordinators if they need it. Okay, not everybody coming on as a coordinator has done it 3 or 4 times before, and they may not understand what's going on or what their position is or exactly what the magic word SOP, standard operating procedure, is for the position that they're in. Okay, you want to know what motivates them, that they're volunteering all this time and energy in this section of the world. So what makes them? What makes you do it? Think about it. In the SCA, what makes you want to volunteer and give your time and your energy and your expertise? Okay? It's going to be the same thing your coordinators are. Right? So they want to be heard. They want to be respected. They want to be appreciated. So as a main, that's your job. That is your job. You want to manage your people, you want to mentor your people, and you want to recognize your people. So what we did for Australia 29 and 30 is we actually went through all of the OP for our coordinators and made award recommendations based on their last award or how it related to Australia War. Because the Australia War has its own, or had its own 3. Okay? So you can do that. You can do small gifts of appreciation. You can do just simply, oh my God, I am so glad you're here. Even if we lock pilots and pirates in toilets. But, but challenges. You will have challenges, guys, that you don't expect.
Weather.
Weather is huge. The last I checked, Australia War or any SOPs of any war cannot control the weather. So you have to have contingency plans for that weather. What are we going to do when Mark Schnapp's farm floats away? We were in a position one year that it rained so hard. My household is called Delarock. So when it rained that hard, we were known as Loch Delarock. and Burkadai ran around and she had an inner tube and little floaties on because it was
In the water
in the
puddle,
water.
in the middle of camp.
Yeah. I mean, so how do you deal with that? How do you get vehicles in and out when they're in 5 feet of mud? So there are things that are not within your scope of control that you have to deal with it.
Another thing that comes into play is letting the local businesses know you're having a large scale event.
It's there. We go a little farther down. But yes. So some of your facilities that you rent may have things on site. So you may have ice or firewood or something, or a little bakery. You may have something on site. If you have in proximity, especially to like the big stores like Walmart, you let them know. We've got 3,000 people coming your way. You might want to stock up.
On ice, at a minimum.
So
It's
with that
always
flood,
ice.
we bought out every rubber boot in 50-mile radius. I mean, it was,
There were no
insane.
Wellingtons to be found.
No, none. So site management is not only how you're setting up your site, but it's also how you're going to get those emergency vehicles in and out, and when it starts and when it ends, when everybody has to be off. Of course, you're looking at insurance and the same things that we've already mentioned. I don't want to go over what we've already done. You're going to be responsible for regalia, and people think of regalia as like, yeah, you know, royalty has different cornets and different things, but actually it's property. So you're going to deal with all the property that deals with the Australia War, from rebar to tents to space heaters to propane tanks to you name it. If it's at a war, you're going to be responsible for all of that resource and accountability of that resource. So that includes what you are renting. So if you have a cart that comes in and that cart has an issue with the engine, you have to make sure you have paperwork in your hand that says we are not accepting this cart because it has engine problem, before you get the $2,000 bill that you owe them because you blew up their engine. Okay, so you're responsible for all that regalia, for all that property. What did that tent look like when it came in? Did it go out the same way? Et cetera, et cetera. Okay? Warrant management. You cannot take an exchequer or somebody up at front gate taking money if they're not warranted with a financial warrant. So you can't just grab somebody and say, oh, can you just take the money at the front gate? Nah. Okay.
Your Excellency,
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here because we actually have a question about this, and I think it's kind of interesting. The question is, would you put in a letter of intent individually or go in as a group intending to put on a large event together?
Okay, so
Intending to
The
what?
more the merrier.
okay. So
Take all your money.
you can do it either way. With Estrella, it is strongly recommended that you go in with your team because the reason is that KFC is going to take a look at it, and they are going to say if you are an individual trying to handle this, they are going to reject it, or they're going to come back and say we suggest that you bring in other people. Okay? Because one of the things that you're telling the committee is this is how I'm going to manage, and I'm going to divvy it up. So War of the Phoenix, like Trelawny is the mayor. So Duke Troan is responsible for dealing with all the modern motorbikes. So that's his area. Duke Mark looks at all the fighting. Okay? Rachel looks at everything else. So when you do it individually, there's a good chance you're going to be rejected, and the suggestion made back to you that please resubmit with additional supporting staff.
So depending upon the size of the event, and correct me if I'm wrong, you know, it's going to be dependent upon the size of the event. If you are putting on an event, you know, a war, I'm cautious about that word right now. I'll tell you guys about that in a bit. If you're putting on a war the size of War of the Phoenix or Estrella or Pennsic, there's absolutely 100% no way one person can do that, okay? But if you're putting on an event such as Melee Camp, it's slightly, it falls in this weird middle ground where you don't need a giant team, but you need more than one of you. Or great help here in Ysgithr can be run by one person. So it is all going to depend upon the event you're referring to.
But we're referring to, in this case, a very large war. So
Yeah.
you are going to need, trust me. Web and promotion management, you are going to work very closely with your kingdom, web minister. So we've already gone over those rules that has to do that, but you're responsible ultimately for what content goes in there. If your coordinators or your special event coordinator comes and says, we're going to have all these special events, well, it's got to go through you, but it's also got to go through promotions, okay? The seneschal and the promotions. Incident management. You are going to have the weirdest things happen. Hands down, that you would not come across in any other lifetime. And I know, I'm just saying.
The only one that crosses my mind, ladies, do y'all remember the lady that drove into the Porta-John? Yes. Does everybody remember that?
Yes. So
That's an incident.
we've had very interesting things at the war, okay? In all seriousness, there are also things that you are going to have to deal with that you are going to have to manage that are very, very disturbing, okay? If you suffer a death at the war, that is very hard on the people directly involved, on your staff, on yourself. You are going to have the management skills to deal with law enforcement, to deal with the incident reports, or in this case, the significant incident report, and you're going to have the seneschal stuck like glue, okay? So, as you can tell with just the rundown of the responsibilities I gave you, that's not manageable by one person. It's just not. So let's say you want to be a main, but you're not really sure, okay? Your best thing to do is volunteer to be a coordinator first at the war. That is going to give you the expertise. You're going to actually get to have a little domain of your own and really figure it out, and then it allows you to have that whole vista open up in front of you because you're going to those meetings. So now you know everybody's job on what's going on. The other way you can do it, and the best way, is the system that we have mains, and then we have deputy mains. And those deputy mains come in and they learn from the mains, and then they put in to be mains the next year. Okay? That is the easiest way to actually glide into it. Right? Some of us deputy mains, that's not going to happen. No, we're just there for support. And you heard it as live, and that's it. More positions. So you have A&S. So they have classes, they have collegiums, and they have demonstrations. And all that's got to be coordinated. There's baronial and there's royal liaisons, which Her Excellency over there explained. We have beautification. How many banners can we put up and how can we make this the snazziest looking place you've ever seen? Okay? We have special events. There's a lot of special events at the War. We have herald and town criers. We have pre-registration. So when you are pre-regged, how many are pre-regged for the war? Okay, so pre-registration. That's who takes those numbers and processes it. Then we have on-site registration.
Like we need this year.
Okay, so when you come in that tent, and if you've ever been to a war, you know you're going to come up and you're going to get your name read off the list, and you're going to pay your fees if you need to, and get your parking pass, and etc. Okay. We have motor pool, who also takes care of the shuttles, who also takes care of special needs. So not only do they take care of the motor pool itself, but they are also taking care of the handicap or special needs that need the specialized cars. You have parking, RV, and the handicap parking. You have a gate book, both printed and online, that somebody's responsible for. You have the fighting scenarios and the martial weapons. So like archery and throwing axes and etc., as well as rapier and hard suit and your standard. You have regalia. Somebody's got to keep track of all that property. School tours may or may not be in there. Usually school tours are. You have somebody that is responsible for site setup and site takedown and the trash and ash removal in between. All right? You have a marshal in charge. And we talked about, this is a kingdom level event, so you are going to approach those kingdom level officers for your watch, for your seneschalate, marshalate, etc. Okay? But the key is you don't just assume that all of the kingdom officers are going to jump in there and fill a spot. Right? They usually are not a coordinator, but they oversee it. You're going to have a rehydration specialist. Water bears. Not Arizona. You're going to have merchant coordinator. If you're lucky, it will be a merchant because they really, really know the ins and outs of dealing with that topic. You're going to have food vendors. That is not a position, but something you can deal with. You're going to have the watch. You're going to have a web minister, and you're going to have youth activities. Woo! So that is everything that you're going to be responsible for as a main, or a co-main, or a deputy main.
And Your Excellency, are there handbooks that have that kind of information that people could look up?
We have an old one for Stray of War. We have a Stray of War, but a lot of that is specific to that site.
Oh, okay.
It has been presented to the current mains for revision, so that it will now apply to the current war.
Okay.
So that is that's a thing.
Okay.
So yes, there's a way to do it. Okay. Okay. ANS, really fast. Oh, you guys covered everything.
Did we cover everything?
Did we? Any questions? More? No. I have a motor mouth. I cover it all. ANS. Kingdom ANS or baronial ANSs share a bunch of the same things. So we've already talked a lot about most of it, so we're just going to go specifically for it. The first thing you're going to do is contact your crown or your coronets. I will tell you, since the very beginning of Kingdom ANS, this is the most dynamic time of change in the arts, period. So the first two Kingdom ANSs were very small. We had like 8 categories. By the third, we had 20 categories and judging sheets. But now, everything is evolving, and rapidly. So check with your cornets and check with your crowns, depending on what level you're dealing with, because they may not be on the same page. Baronial ANSs do not have to be a reflection of Kingdom, and they may not choose to do it the same way. They may not choose their champions the same way. They may or may not have household champions. They may or may not have youth, etc. So check with them right off the bat, because that's going to give you directions. We've already talked about obtaining a date for your site, suitable and affordable sites, submission of budget, obtaining insurance, review site contract, notify Kingdom Baronial officers if their services are needed. Do not assume. Make sure you have talked to them. You want to arrange, hopefully, you want to arrange for food on site, if possible. Arts competitions they can be compressed. Your excellency will tell you that.
We can compress them.
They can compress them to anybody 6 hours. I was astonished. Or they can go 8 hours. But you really want to try to keep your populace there in attendance. So you want to try to do food so that people are not leaving site to get it. And Magdalene mentioned a lot of different ways that you can have food on the site. The competition itself, it doesn't matter what level, you need to familiarize yourself with those rules of the competition, right? What was printed last year may not be applicable. So if you competed 2 years ago, it may not be the same arts competition. So as the arts officer, you're going to have a lot of questions really rapidly. And you don't have time to go, wait a minute, it's on page, oh God, I don't know, wait a minute. Oh no, that's not it. Okay, so know what that competition looks like.
Make sure you publish the rules
Yeah.
so our participants know.
Yeah.
Right?
So you're going to have to be flexible. You may have a cornet or a crown that says, oh, yeah, I know, I looked at those rules, I like it. But you signed off on it. Well, I don't like that now. Okay. So you need to be flexible to their wishes. You need to create a schedule of events. Opening court, judging, closing court, whatever. You know, potluck, whatever you're doing, you have to have a schedule. Administrative system for management of the competition. Oh my God. If anybody, this is where it all goes to hell in a handbasket, folks. You have to have some way that you're going to make sure you have enough judging sheets. You are going to have to make sure that you have administration forms that entrants can fill out and say, this is what I'm entering. And you can tell what they're entering. That usually helps, right? You need to be able to track that competition. Who won, what category, et cetera, the points, and keep track of it. Who your competitors are, who your household champion, who your youth, et cetera, et cetera. So, Golda will tell you that it's quite hilarious. So, here am I, old school, I got my paper, and it's a 12 lines right there. I got it all written out. Golda is hysterical. She slaps it down, puts that computer up, free slide.
Can we just put this in Excel, Your Excellency?
I'm like, what the hell's Excel?
What that is.
I'm like I know what Excel is, but I can't do it. So where you go? Delegate. Delegate is very important. Okay. Pre-registration, if it is applicable. Some arts competitions want artisans to pre-register. Why? Because we have to find the judges. So if you're pre-registered, we can line up judges ahead of time. Some do not require it, which means what? If you're autocrating it, you have to have a plethora of judges that know who they are in their field of expertise to be able to go and get them. promotion of web and social media and on site, court promotions. When it is done, when it is all done, people, it is every bit as important to query out there, to ask the populace and the participants, what did you like and what did you not like? What would you like to see next year? What would you like to see different? And finally, thanking them. It doesn't matter if it's largesse, it doesn't matter if it's in court and thanking them. It can come from you as the ANS officer, or it can come from the baronial cornets or kingdom, the crown. But to be in gratitude is the best way to keep your volunteers. Any questions?
General questions.
Any general questions?
You guys have any general questions? Anything y'all want to revisit? You're looking a little shell-shocked over there, honey.
We always do. We don't do it well. This is my natural face.
So we just got a question.
Okay.
Can we talk a little bit about the timing for Kingdom ANS, since planning for that event will happen long before we know who the heirs are? What types of things can we wait to do until we know?
Okay. So you're gonna have it's every 6 months to begin with. So it's not a year out. It's every 6 months. It's gonna be dynamic. So what you're gonna do ahead of time is you're gonna try to get a date, secure a site. If it's 6 months out, most crowns or coronets will say, oh yeah, if you found one and we can afford it, yay team. You want to get those rules out and make sure that the current crown or current baronial cornets are going to be there for 2 to 3 years. So you don't have to worry about that. On a kingdom level, it's going to be every 6 months. So you may have heirs. The crown usually will defer to the heirs and say, oh, this will be your ANS competition when you step up. So you as the arts officer go to the crown heirs, okay, the crown prince and princess, and have them look at the rules, have them look at how you're running it, how they're picking their champion, etc. Do you want judging sheets? You don't want judging sheets. I will tell you, most of the populace that enter, I was surprised, want to have their judging sheets as well. Not only sit down verbal, but they actually want those judging sheets. So if you are doing it, make sure you get with the heirs, because they are going to have all of those questions answered for you prior to their arts competition.
So, because the way the Kingdom calendar works is we work a year in advance, right? And each barony is assigned at least one Kingdom level event. So, as the calendar works now, you could have the barony who is going to be assigned the next Kingdom ANS. Something you want to think about for that, you need a large venue for the display of the art, right? That's the whole purpose of the event. You'll need a ready room because their majesties will like some quiet to think about who they want to select for their champions to be. You might want to think about maybe having space to do classes at that event. Talk to the Kingdom ANS officer. That person is going to give you lots of advice and lots of information. So they will be helping you with the coordination of that event.
So normally the main event stewards for an ANS competition is that officer. Not always, but normally that is how it runs. Then you will have a outside site. If the crown or coronet say, hey, we want to bring somebody else on, they're still not going to do it solely and separate apart from the ANS officer. They cannot make up their own arts and science competition because they are being the autocrat.
That actually brings me to something that I wanted us to talk about. When you're hosting a Kingdom event, it's a little different. If it is coronation, it is all about our crowns. You work with the incoming crown and the outgoing crown to set your event up the way they want it set up. If it is a crown tournament, you work with your crown, your kingdom marshal, your kingdom seneschal, and your kingdom list to set the event up the way they want it done. If it is A&S, you work with the Kingdom Minister of Arts and Sciences. Kingdom events, they hold a lot more sway on that event versus a baronial event where your cornet and your local seneschal may go, it's within the rules, do your thing.
To add to that, you may have a crown or a cornet that says, I want the A&S officer and my champion to autocrat this event.
Yes.
But you will never have, or have not had in all the years that I've at it, a event steward separate from the office that has carte blanche to do whatever they want at that event.
Refer back to the ANS
Okay.
officer.
So,
Yeah. So, is there any other questions?
I do want to speak to one thing. The question was, what things can you have ready and what things can you hold off on until you know who the heirs are? Depending on your timeline, and that is something really important for you to pay attention to. This previous crown, my champion was one of the finalists, and the Kingdom A&S came up to me and said, it's going to be in 2 weeks, so, and I was just like, I haven't even thought about that. So you, as the person who's running the event, have good questions for them, for any input you want from them, but don't, like, our Kingdom A&S was very clear, I have these 3 questions that I will need answers for. So if you come to them with, these are the ideas I have, what do you think about these ideas? It'll make it a lot easier for people who are already a little bit shell-shocked to be able to help you have a better event. And then that's dealing with your royals again.
Yes. Yes. So, all right.
I want this last little bit. So,
Okay.
one little thing. So, as the autocrat of any event, a couple of things one should think about. You should eat breakfast the day of the event.
Yes.
Because you probably might not have time to eat during the
rest
event.
of the day.
Okay? You should expect that at some point during the event, you're going to make announcements to the public. Right? Prepare for that. I mean, you can do it off the cuff. Some people are really good, but most people like to have some idea about what they're going to say. Again, you're going to probably need to point out where the bathrooms are at the site. Make mention about trash, any specific site limitations or site requirements, right? You want to talk about that. Maybe include the marshalate to talk about what the tournament's about, or what the rapier tournament's about, or what the archery shoot is about. But be prepared that people are going to ask you questions. You are the person everybody expects to know all the things. Does that mean that you have to know them all? No, you don't. But you also then have to be able to have some backup resources, right? Your seneschal is going to be one of those great backup resources who help you answer all the weird things that happen that you didn't plan for or didn't expect to happen. Lots of members within the barony will jump up and help you with all kinds of things. You just need to ask. Don't forget to ask. Don't be shy about asking for help. Make sure that you too are having fun. This is not supposed to be torture. You're putting on this beautiful event and you've invited all of these great people and they have chosen to grace us all with their presence and share the day together. Enjoy that time too, because it's fun. Give yourself time after the event to take a break and a breather. You're going to need to reinvigorate your own being after spending out all of that energy for the event. Write an after event report. It would be beneficial for those people coming after you who might want to host an event to get some insight for things you found that you didn't think about and learned a lesson from, or a recommendation for someone else, right? That information would be helpful for your barony, especially when your barony is looking to add new events or add new stewards to something. Ask people what they thought about the event, right? It's not, those conversations shouldn't be, they shouldn't be negative towards you. They should be, hopefully, provided in a manner where people are trying to just help you be better and help the event be better. And so if you're going to give advice about how an event went, be kind. The event steward put a lot of time, energy, and personal effort into the event. If you rip them apart into 5 million shreds, guess what you're going to do? You're going to lose as a person. You're not going to help the society as a whole. So be kind.
No, that's
Can I tag on to that?
Yep.
Have a friend. Have a friend who's willing to walk up behind you and say, have you eaten? When did you go pee? Have you had a drink? Where's your water? You will forget.
All of those things.
You will 100% forget. So having a friend who will help you is super duper helpful. I thought about that when you were talking. I was like, you need a
100%.
buddy.
The care and feeding of an event steward is just as important as the event itself, because if you fall apart, well, you're not the hostess with the mostest.
Not anymore.
So, however, I will tag one thing into this. There are 3 things you must keep in your vehicle if you are going to steward an event. A package of toilet paper, 1 roll of paper towels, and 1 jug of water. Those 3 things right there, you can clean up any mess. Doesn't matter what the mess is, you can clean up the mess. All right, ladies, I appreciate y'all willing to jump on this crazy train with me. It has been fabulous. This has been a lot of information.
Well, thank you for organizing it and herding the cats.
Well,
To the spot.
we'll just get better next time. Does anybody else have anything? All right, so I just want to take a moment. I'm sorry?
Being as there's no further
Being
questions.
Thank you very much. Very appreciated. And Kiko, thank you so much for coming and joining us and letting us live stream this to the Kingdom. So, to everybody else in the Kingdom that is watching the live stream, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Though we are Ysgithr, we are more than happy to help anybody, anywhere, at any time.
Yep.
Yes?
Absolutely.
Good? Good night! Bye!
You can help